by Hollis, Wright, and Couch, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts, the attorneys with Josh Wright from the Hollis, Wright, and Couch law firm, and host David Lamb.
Hello and welcome in to the attorneys. Appreciate you spending your Sunday evening with us for the next half hour. The goal here is to answer your tough legal questions. To get those questions to us, easy to do so. Throughout the program, you'll see ways you can call, text, or email the attorneys at Hollis, Wright, and Couch and get in touch with them. So feel free to do so even during the next half hour. Joined by Josh Wright from the firm Hollis, Wright, and Couch. Good to see you, sir.
You too. Hope you had a great week.
And you as well.
You know, David, this is a interesting topic, corporal punishment, a topic we've never tackled before on the show. And we try and shake things up each week.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are lawyers that really take on calls in our legal profession, and this is a good example of that circumstance. We brought Greg Yaghmai on, and Greg is at Rutledge and Yaghmai, and they handle many different types of cases, but one of the causes that Greg has kind of championed is this concept of corporal punishment and whether or not it's appropriate in Alabama, how we can change our legislation and those types of things. So Greg, we're happy to have you on. We're glad to have you here and really kind of look forward to delving into this topic that I think will be interesting to the viewers.
Josh, David, I appreciate y'all having me in. It is a controversial topic across the nation that, you know, each state handles differently, and Alabama, unfortunately, we're at the top of the list again of how we administer corporal punishment in schools.
Yeah. First off, from a jumping off point, help us understand what exactly is, maybe by definition, what is corporal punishment?
Well, corporal is derived from the word corpus, or the body, you know, where punishment is administered, whether by hand or by paddle or by other means. And in this context, obviously, we're talking in the children aspect.
And is it legal in the state of Alabama?
It is. Alabama is one of the 19 states that allows for educators to administer what they term corporal punishment. I've sort of taken the position that, depending on the circumstances, it's not even corporal punishment. It's just an old-fashioned beating that happens to be by a teacher, and therefore they try to get the protection of the laws in Alabama.
Sometimes we actually treat inmates better than we do our own children in schools in certain school districts, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, in Alabama, it's not legal to strike an inmate. It's not legal to strike an animal. It's not legal at times for a parent to strike a child, but we allow the teachers to make these decisions on when and how they should strike children in educational systems.
And Greg, explain, not every county in the state allows for the administration of corporal punishment, do they?
That's correct. Alabama has, you know, laws that allows each school district to set their own policies and procedures and how they're implemented, which is good because, you know, the city of Birmingham, for example, does not allow corporal punishment. Cities up north or counties like DeKalb County, and we've got a case up there that they do allow for corporal punishment, and they have these policies and procedures that they claim that they follow in the administration of corporal punishment.
It sounds like also, and you kind of let off with this, corporal punishment is not just in the school system. It can be considered also through DHR at the home if it's done in an aggressive manner.
Right, that's true. You know, that's one of the fine lines that get blurred with regards to, you could have the exact same child doing the exact same behavior and the exact same punishment, but if a teacher does it, it's fine. If a parent does it, then they're facing potential criminal charges.
Questions, we get some great questions here. One question here, what kind of behavior does my child have to engage in for the school to be allowed to spank?
Well, that's an interesting question because, again, every school jurisdiction sets their own policies and procedures, and the policies that I've seen, they are so broad. I mean, there is specific things for cursing and fighting and, you know, endangering other students, but then you get into generalized terms of, you know, not being prepared or not doing what they're supposed to, and these teachers are given autonomy to make these decisions. So as a parent, I've got a 9-year-old daughter, and as a parent, I can read these policies and procedures, even as a lawyer that handles these cases, and I can't specifically tell you what's allowed and what's not allowed.
Yeah, that actually goes to a question from a parent here. This parent says, personally, I do not spank my children, but my school does and does not allow me to opt out of it. Is there anything I can do?
Well, you know, by opting out, they mean if you are in that school jurisdiction, you can't get on a quote-unquote no paddle list.
Right.
You can't say, don't touch my child no matter what. So then that great question becomes, what can I do? Legally, the way the law sits in Alabama right now, there's nothing you can do about it. But in the reality of it is, if you complain to the principals, to the school districts, to the legislatures, and trying to make it known that you will not sit by and let your child get, paddled at their discretion, hopefully you can make some waves.
Yeah, I think there certainly is. The attitude towards spanking is much different than whenever we were growing up today. So it's kind of the environment seems to have changed. Can teachers and should teachers be more on guard and cautious? I mean, can they be liable or open themselves up to some sort of a suit?
They can. What the law in Alabama stands right now, as long as they follow the written policies and procedures of the school district that they teach in, they have civil and criminal immunity, which means they are protected by the law, that nothing can happen to them. And in fact, the legislature even goes further to say that the school board basically has to back them up and protect them and give them legal representation and do everything they can to protect the teacher if they follow the policies and procedures.
The dispute in some of these cases is related to whether or not they were following the policy or not. Mm-hmm. There's a fairly recent case that Greg and I were talking about before we went on air, called the Monroe case, that related to a teacher that claimed immunity for spanking a child or providing some form of corporal punishment. And in that case, the policy required that multiple teachers had to be present to be able to witness what was happening, but this teacher on her own did the corporal punishment and violated the policy and did not get the benefit of immunity. So a lot of the dispute related to these types of cases, to the extent that they amount to civil litigation, relates to whether or not the teacher was following the policy or not. And I think I did justice to that case.
That's accurate. That's accurate. It gives but it still provides immunity in state court system for the school board.
Yeah.
So in that particular case, the case against the teacher solely was allowed to proceed while the school board was let out of the case.
And I mean, I don't know the rules, but can the teacher spank for most anything, or is it all behavioral type of issues? I mean, certainly for making a bad grade or something like that. I mean, a teacher can't spank a child for most anything, can they?
Well, I mean, that's the dispute, like Josh hit upon. These policies and the ones I've seen are so broadly written that they'll list specific things they can, for cursing and fighting, and that, is understood. Yeah. But when you get into these gray areas of what they claim that they can paddle a kid for anything, for example, this case that I'm talking about in DeKalb County, under oath, the school superintendent, the school principal testified that according to their policies and procedures, they can spank a kindergartner for not bringing a pencil to class. Now they say we don't do that, which I don't know whether I believe or not, but if we wanted to, we could. And that goes to the interpretation of who's interpreting it. It ends up being the teachers, because they don't have any training about how to read policies and procedures. So you're just subjected to whatever the teacher feels that the policies state.
Yeah, you can see where this could get out of control and where it actually goes from following a policy and procedure that a parent can justify and accept, and taking it to a level that's totally inconsistent with what is supposed to be done in a school system.
Yeah, time for our first break. As we head to break, more of our conversation here on corporal punishment in schools. But as we head to break, a reminder, you can get in touch with us, the firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch. They're easy to reach as well. Just call, text, email, find them on Facebook. Just search the term Hollis, Wright & Couch, and find them on Twitter at Hollis_Wright. Stay tuned. We're coming right back.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch, and thanks for watching The Attorneys on Alabama's 13. Now, we hope you, a friend, or a loved one never need legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple. Provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free, so if you have questions specific to this show or related to other civil legal matters, call, email, or text us to talk with one of our lawyers. You can also follow us on Facebook or Twitter to learn about important legal news that could affect you or your family. Or simply contact us by going to alabamas13.com and click on the Attorneys link. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and for watching The Attorneys right here on Alabama's 13.
car crash.
Welcome back into the attorneys. Remember, throughout the show, got a couple of segments left. Plenty of time for you to call, text, email, and get your questions to us. Josh Wright of the firm Hollis, Wright and Couch, discussing corporal punishment.
You know, again, an interesting topic. Now, Greg, I know there are circumstances where almost all of the Venarian jury out there believe corporal punishment is wrong. Spanking a kindergartner for, losing a pencil, or spanking a child that has a disability just because they have a disability. But do you see juries in Alabama that some of the juries also recognize that corporal punishment, or think that corporal punishment is a good thing and it has its place in Alabama?
Absolutely. Growing up in the South, I grew up in Georgia. I went to a public school where they had corporal punishment, and I think it's a cultural thing. Mm-hmm. The biblically based, some of them cite, and just growing up in the South, well, my daddy did that to me, why shouldn't that happened to my child? And it's interesting, I think more of the studies have come out, like the American Academy of Pediatrics wrote a letter back in 2000 urging people in school districts to not employ corporal punishment. The reason being was the medical studies they had showed that kids that were beaten at school tend to be more aggressive, to bully other kids. That led to higher dropout rates. And then when you have higher dropout rates, you have less chance of getting a successful job, and it just sort of spirals. And these people are independent medical doctors that have taken the time and the research, even as back as 2000, to talk about these issues that occur. And again, to say, well, it happened to me and I'm fine, well, that may be true, but when we were kids, they didn't have car seats as much as they do. Is that a bad thing that now, the studies have shown the safety of children using car seats? I mean, we're always trying to improve the safety of our children.
There are a lot of other options of discipline that can be employed by the school system other than corporal punishment, obviously, to get the point across to children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another question we have here, a scenario: my child was paddled at school, came home with bruises. Is that severity of paddling actually allowed?
Well, they're supposed to use in most of these things called moderate physical force. Uh-huh. What does that mean? I mean, that's one of the million-dollar questions, too. In my opinion, you cannot paddle a child to the point where they receive bruises and still comply with the policies and procedures. I mean, that should not be allowed. It's not designed to be a punitive or to injure a child, in the nerve endings and in the rear end that are most sensitive, and then, you get in there and you start bursting blood vessels, and that's how a bruise occurs. So it's not something that a child should get paddled to the point of having a bruise, even within the policies and procedures of a school district.
I think we covered some of this in the first segment, but answer this for me. If you are in a school system where paddling is allowed, I know you mentioned you can't just say don't paddle my child, but are there opt-in and opt-out rights in certain school systems that people can find out information and try and determine whether or not their child's subject to this or not?
Absolutely. Like, again, the school district is charged with giving a copy to the parents of the policies and procedures, and in that policy and procedure it should say whether you can opt out or be on a no paddle list, or whether you don't have any option. And my recommendation is, even if they tell you you can't opt out, still raise the issue. Put it in writing. Let them know that you do not want your child to be paddled for any reason, and that you should handle the discipline at home.
Sounds like communication with the teachers, with the superintendent, or maybe even the principal is probably the right way to handle that.
I mean, I think it is. Again, you're at their mercy. It depends on the attitude that they have regarding whether they're going to do what they want to do it, how they want to do it, and if you don't like it, then move out of the school district. I mean, I've heard that presented before. If you don't like it, either send your kid to a private school or just move out of the district.
What are some of the type cases that you see most often in this area, in this arena?
Well, the cases that we see most often are where a teacher has just made a decision to paddle a child for a reason they deem falls under the policies and procedures. And I'd beg to say that probably most of them go unnoticed. Most of them because either parents don't know that there's problems with this, or if the child's not injured. I mean, if there's no bruising or no anything like that, is it actionable? Do you have a right to do something about it? So I would suspect that the vast majority of paddlings that may violate the policies and procedures go unnoticed.
A question here, talking about paddling, how not being a good choice in some instances. A question here about what are good alternatives to corporal punishment.
Yeah, I mean, I think the research shows from independent medical associations like the American Academy of Pediatrics that you can have in-school suspension, that you can have detention like we used to have when I was a kid. There are alternatives. I mean, I hate to use the phrase time out, but some sort of form where a child is put isolated from their classmates and the rest of the class knows that that behavior is not acceptable. So there are a number of alternatives other than taking a piece of wood out, taking a kid outside and hitting him with it.
Is in your studies, and I think we touched on this a little, but just to kind of be clear here, is there evidence that corporal punishment actually does not achieve the desired goal as far as a deterrent?
That's correct. I mean, the states that are generally considered the best in the nation for education, I think it's either 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 that don't allow for corporal punishment that are nationally recognized. In the bottom 10 states, it's either again 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 that do allow for it. Yeah. So, I mean, if we're in a football place where we all like numbers and points and statistics, there you have it. I mean, that's plain and simple statistics there.
What's the rationale for the legislation in the other states that has outlawed corporal punishment? I mean, is it pretty much the same in each state, or is it different in each state? What's the general kind of consensus as to why corporal punishment from a legislative perspective is not allowed in those states?
Well, I think that they recognize, and they're starting to take heed to what these studies say, because they recognize they're independent medical doctors, psychologists, people that have gathered this data to make a determination, and they have determined that it is not beneficial. And even locally, the city of Birmingham has banned it, because I think that same recognition that is out there. I mean, I don't know how much to play. They're worried about litigation and that sort of thing. I would hope that genuinely their concern is with the children, and the best thing to do is to not have this policy that, one child may act one way, and in one school district he's paddled, one school district he's not paddled, one teacher thinks he should be paddled, one teacher thinks he shouldn't be paddled, and there's just no uniformity about it either.
Are the signs pointing to it being outlawed in the state of Alabama? Do you believe that day is
I don't know.
Close?
That's an interesting. I mean, it's starting to get groundswell. There was a designer out of New York named Mark Echo who has somehow taken it upon himself to launch this across the country. I mean, he started a website called unlimitedjustice.com where it actually gives the facts and gives the citations of what these studies talk about.
Yeah, so the jury's still out on that. Huh? Yeah, all right. Our final break of the evening. More of the attorneys coming up on the other side as we head to break. Reminders of how you can get in touch with the firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch. Also, if you're a Facebooker, find them there. Hollis, Wright & Couch is all you need to search for, and Hollis_Wright if you tweet. So you'll find them there on Twitter. Stay tuned. We're coming right back.
I'm Steve Couch with the law firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch. When someone whose unreasonable conduct causes an injury to someone else, the law says that person is negligent. So it seems the injured person should receive some type of damages, right? Well, that's not always the case in Alabama. In tonight's Legal 411, we answer the question, what is contributory negligence and comparative fault? Alabama is only one of 4 states in the nation to withhold damages based on contributory negligence, meaning if you're at fault, even just a little, you cannot be allowed damages in a case. For example, a case where a defendant may be 99% at fault for hurting you, if you're found to be even 1% at fault, Alabama law says you get nothing. 4 states, Virginia, North Carolina, Maryland, and Alabama, plus the District of Columbia, are the only places in the country where a defendant can completely avoid paying an injured person even if they're even 1% at fault. This is very different from comparative fault, the measure that is used in the other 46 states in the country. There are 2 versions of this system, but both essentially allow money damages based on the percentages. For example, if the injured person was 20% at fault for causing the accident, then the recovery for medical bills and lost wages is reduced by that same 20%. There's numerous studies across the country that show people who live in comparative fault states believe that their system of justice is more fair. Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis, Wright & Couch want to help answer the questions that face you every day. Remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. Thanks again for watching The Attorneys here on Alabama's 13.
Welcome back into our attorneys. Our topic of conversation tonight, corporal punishment. A reminder, just a few minutes left in the show, but time for you to get your question in. In fact, even after the show, you can call, text, email, get that info and your question to the attorneys of Hollis, Wright, and Couch. Corporate punishment, learning some stuff here tonight.
Oh, there's no doubt. Let me ask you this. The consensus kind of the physicians out there and those that are educated in this area, is corporal punishment doing its job of disciplining, or is it having an adverse reaction and event? What's the consensus?
I think in the medical profession, the consensus is absolutely it's having an adverse or reaction to what are happening to these children. Like the Academy of Pediatrics believes that corporal punishment may affect adversely a student's self-image and also school achievement, and it may contribute to disruptive and violent student behavior. You teach a kid, you get in trouble, I'm going to beat you, then they're going to turn around and they learn from that behavior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, what if a parent watching does not want their child, corporal punishment to take place? It kind of sounds like there are no alternatives. But what would you, if you think your child has been spanked and you really think it goes over the line, what things would you advise parents to do?
Well, I would advise them first to notify the school in writing that something has happened and that it's not acceptable. I would take your child to see a physician to see what injuries they may or may not have. If there are injuries, I'd photograph them to document or take a video of them, and then contact an attorney to see if you potentially have a case of some sort of liability. But obviously the first need is to make sure that the child is okay, not only physically but from a mental standpoint, and sit down and talk to your child and see what reaction he or her had from that particular situation.
Greg, answer this. Does DHR get involved in a school setting, or is that generally only in a home environment if a child comes to school and shows signs of some type of punishment from home that DHR gets involved? How does that work?
I mean, interestingly, again, if you have the exact same conduct by a parent, then DHR get involved. If you have the conduct by a teacher, generally what happens, in some cases the police get involved, school resource officers get involved, and they make a decision about whether to present it to the district attorney's office or not. But typically DHR would not get involved in the context if a teacher has struck a student.
Is there a question here from a parent? If I don't want my child spanked and don't like the way it's done, is there anything that can be done to help change that law?
Well, I mean, it sounds elementary, but I would contact your legislature from a local to, all the way to your state senators, to U.S. senators in your state, to try to make this push to get something done. Because without it, with the silence of the parents, I don't think you're ever going to effectuate any change. It was 20 states, and one state, and I believe it was Tennessee, in the past year has now banned corporal punishment. So there is starting to get some momentum out there for these states that are getting notification from not only the medical professionals but the voting public out there that are parents.
For the cases that you see in this area, the ones that are really egregious, are you seeing circumstances where the teacher is just using this as not a form of discipline but a punitive nature and just almost a power issue, kind of taking advantage of it?
I mean, absolutely. I'm involved in a case now where you got a teacher that's 6'4", 325 pounds, paddling a student who's my client for failing a test. And they claim, no, it wasn't because he failed a test, because he didn't do his homework. I'm sorry, that's for a kid that, even if you accept what they say is true about not doing a homework, I mean, what does that teach that child next time? or next time or next time. Or we know that it was for failing a test. Do you think the teacher calls on the class and asks the student to raise his hand and answer? Do you think these kids are going to raise their hand for fear of whatever repercussions they may get for not getting the right answer?
We're just about out of time, but we have time enough for a final comment. Just for our viewers and the folks watching, what kind of message would you like to send them home with?
You know, the message I would say is, please don't get caught in the, well, it happened to me and I'm fine, therefore it should happen to my child, because we are getting to the point now where these teachers are just making their own decisions without any, basis, that it does become a, power play. I mean, we're the only third world country that allows this. I mean, for context, in Iran, with the radical government they have, they don't allow for it in schools. But yet in the United States, where we try to protect prisoners from not being struck, or animals from not being struck, we somehow sit by and let our kids get struck.
And I guess I'd just say, first of all, thank you, Greg, so much for being on. You've enlightened the viewers a lot in this area. We're certainly not advocating and saying here that all forms of discipline are inappropriate. There are appropriate forms of discipline, both at home and in the school system, that work. Some of these are just outrageous, and that's where we're talking about those types of issues.
All right, gentlemen, thanks so much for the time. Thank you for watching as well. We appreciate you being with us. Ways for you to contact the law firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch. Be sure and get in touch with them, and we look forward to seeing you next Sunday night.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch.